Hello, everyone. Welcome back from spring break. I'm sorry to throw this to you at the last minute, but we found out on the Friday before spring break that despite the announcement made by College Board that there would be no essays on the SAT this year, Michigan decided that they would require the essay. So I don't want you to freak out. Because the foundation is already laid. You guys already know how to do a rhetorical analysis. You've been doing them all year. Your 3-step annotations, where you annotate for what are the arguments being made, what are the appeals being used, and what are the devices being used, and then the soapstone analysis that you fill out, that's the basis of your essay. You already know how to do all of that. So the only thing you need to know now is how do you put that information into an essay format. So that's what we're going to look at real quick in this Edpuzzle. So if I can get it to move forward. There we go. So soapstone. You guys know how to do that. Okay. The rhetorical strategies used. Tone. That's the attitude of the speaker, not the tone of voice. Diction. Now, diction is word we use, but just a fancy word of saying the word choice. Okay, why do they choose to use the words they use, and why do they put them together the way they are? And then the modes of persuasion: ethos, pathos, and logos. Okay, and then why did the author choose to use these strategies? That is basically your essay. So why does the author make the choices that they make? How do the rhetorical strategies used help the author achieve his or her purpose? And remember, in your soapstone, you identify the purpose. And why does the author choose these strategies for the particular audience and occasion? Okay, and that's key. So, your introductory paragraph. You put soapstone into the intro and follow the format. So, step 1, speaker, occasion, and subject. The writer's credentials, the writer's first and last name, and his or her type of text, title of text, then use a strong verb, and then what the subject is. Now, before this scares you too much, they give you all of this on the SAT, and I'm going to show you that. So, an example would be novelist Amy Tan and her narrative essay, Fish Cheeks, recounts an embarrassing Christmas Eve dinner. Okay? Then the purpose, the second part. Writer's last name's purpose is to, and then what the writer does in the text. And again, they're going to tell you this. Okay, so none of this is going to be a surprise to you because it's all laid out for you in plain words before you even read the essay. Okay, but here's an example of how that would look. Tan's purpose is to convey the idea that at 14, she wasn't able to recognize the love her mother had for her. And then finally, audience and tone. Let me see if I can move myself up here in the corner. There we go. Okay. He or she adopts a or an adjective describing the attitude, feeling conveyed by the writer. Tone in order to verb phrase, describing what the writer wants the readers to do or think in his or her intended audience. She adopts a sentimental tone in order to appeal to similar feelings in her adult readers. Okay. So this is just an example, but you're putting in there all of the stuff from your soapstone pretty much. Okay. Come on. And so here's the example. Novelist Amy Tan and her narrative essay, Fish Cheeks, recounts an embarrassing Christmas Eve dinner when she was 14 years old. Tan's purpose is to convey the idea that at 14, she wasn't able to recognize the love of her mother had for her or the sacrifices she made. She adopts a sentimental tone in order to appeal to similar feelings and experiences in her adult readers. Now notice the color coding. Every single thing from soapstone is in that intro. Whoop. Let's go back. Okay, so speaker, Amy Tan. Occasion, it was a narrative essay. Now your occasion is going to probably not be a narrative essay. It's going to be a newspaper article or an introduction to a book or a speech, okay? Audience, okay? And we can go through all of them. It's all used here. The body, and that's where you actually do the analysis. And this can be 2 to 3 paragraphs long. You can work chronologically through the text, so you can look at the beginning, middle, and end. So what do they start with? Do they start with an anecdote? Then do they move to scientific arguments? Then do they move to, calls to action? Do they start with big ideas and move to specifics, or do they start with a very small specific idea and move to big ideas? All of these are different ways that the arguments can be organized. So you can, in your body, work chronologically yourself and start with, here's what they do first, here's what they do second, here's what they do third. Or you can divide the tasks into paragraphs. Okay? So like here they start, we use an anecdote. They use this, they use that, okay? Use transitions to help you go between the paragraphs. Identify the strongest rhetorical strategies used. Do not try to discuss every strategy the writer uses. Pick the strongest ones, okay? Appeals, diction, so the word choices, those are the things that really set the tone. Then, and tone is going to be one of the most important features in your analysis. The types of arguments used. Are they setting them up? Are they appealing to the emotion with an anecdote? Are they using scientific facts and figures? Are they using logical argument structures? All of that kind of stuff, okay? You can bring up things like parallelism and repetition in particular, okay, is really powerful for driving a point home. You guys know these. Parallelism helps you remember lists of things. But those are things that help drive the point home, not necessarily the main thrust of the argument, okay? So you want to pick the strongest things. It includes incorporating specific text examples, exact words from the text in your own words. You cite them using paragraph numbers. So in paragraph 1, in paragraph 2, in paragraph 7, they won't be that long. The author says, or, Tan, if we're using the Amy Tan example, states, and then lay out what they do. You use your ICE for that. Clearly and specifically explain how the rhetorical strategies are used to help the writer achieve his purpose and reach his audience, his or her purpose, okay? They must be woven together seamlessly into 3 sophisticated paragraphs of the body of your analysis essay. You can do it in 2, okay? If you're running short on time, you can do it in 2. Just pick the strongest ones. Okay, when analyzing diction, and that's the word choice, it's simply the words the writer chooses to convey a particular meaning. Look for specific words or short phrases that seem stronger than the others. Diction is never the entire sentence, so it's the specific word or phrase, like, I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream. It's 3 words, and the repetition drives it home, but they're very specifically chosen words, okay? Look for a pattern or similarity in the words the writer uses. Do the words imply sadness, happiness? Examples we've looked at, they use very strong descriptive language, and that's what you're looking for. Look for repetition of the same word or phrases. Repeating the same word or phrase helps the reader emphasize a point or a feeling. Again, think of the I have a dream. Effective diction is shaped by words that are clear, concrete, and exact. They're not wishy-washy. Words like, they did a nice job, or they did a good job. Those are wishy-washy, okay? Yes, you're saying something nice, but they're not exact, okay? Good writers avoid words like pretty, nice, and bad because they are not specific enough. Instead, they rely on words that invoke a specific effect in order to bring the reader into the event being described. So think of, ain't I a woman? We have the repetition of the phrase, ain't I a woman? Ain't I a woman? And then she uses a lot of words that point out how bad her situation was, and that helps set the tone. Okay, examples. A coat isn't torn, it's tattered. The U.S. Army does not want revenge, it is thirsting for revenge. Door does not shut, it thuds or slams, something like that, okay? So avoid saying the author used diction. Diction is the words on the page. Without them, the page would be blank. So anytime there's writing, there's diction. So you never want to say the author used diction. You want to say the author creates a blank diction through the use of. For some reason that jumped ahead. So you want to say something like the author creates a inspiring tone through the use of word choice, words such as, okay, or the language in the text is, okay. Here's some tone. When writing your essay, avoid saying the writer uses tone. Again, all phrases, everything spoken, written, anything, all has a tone. Okay, so you want to be more specific than that. You want to say the writer creates a blank tone, so a humorous tone, a pleasant tone, a warm, tender, a rhetorical, a formal, indignant, thoughtful, all of those sorts of things. Okay. I'm going to escape out of this because I have some other things to show you. Now, if you remember back at the beginning, when we said the introduction to the rhetorical analysis essay, it's even easier, okay, with the SAT. They don't expect things like a hook. You're not going to put a hook in here, okay? It's very straightforward. Your introduction could be at most 3 sentences, okay? So it's not going to be huge. And here's why. Here's an example of a prompt from a previous SAT. They all look exactly the same. They all follow the same format, okay? And there's a couple of things to know. They all say straight off the bat, this is a persuasive piece, okay? And then they're asking you to tell them why it's so persuasive. So you never, ever, ever, ever want to argue with that. You never want to say, well, this isn't effective, or this doesn't do a good job, or I disagree with this. They don't care, okay? They don't care about personal opinion here at all. They care about, can you tell them what tools, such as appeals, diction, tone, repetition, parallelism, what are they, how they structure their argument, okay? Analyze that as opposed to whether telling them it's a good argument or a bad argument. They're telling you off the bat it's a good argument, okay? So, prompt is always the same. As you read the passage below, consider how Paul Bogard, which is the author, uses evidence such as facts or examples to support claims, reasoning to develop ideas and connect claims and evidence, stylistic or persuasive elements such as word choice or appeals to emotion to add power to the ideas expressed. Okay, now you get at the beginning the author, the audience, okay, what mode it is, okay, it gives you the background information here, as I was saying. Sorry about the pause there. Paul Bogard, Let There Be Dark, copyright 2012 by the Los Angeles Times. Anytime you get a word there that's Times, generally speaking, that's a newspaper, okay? So this was published in a newspaper, originally published December 21st, 2012. It's called Let There Be Dark. If it's in a newspaper, it's going to be an opinion or what's called an op-ed or an article. And we know who published it. Then you have to read, do quick analysis, okay? And then you'll get the prompt. And here's where they tell you what the author's purpose was, what their argument was, all of those things. So you don't need to figure it out on your own. So when you're approaching these, go here, look at this, skip the essay first, and read the prompt, because that's going to tell you exactly what he's arguing in the essay. Then go back and read the essay and do your analysis. Okay, so write an essay in which you explain how Paul Bogard builds an argument to persuade his audience that natural darkness should be preserved. Right there, that tells you the main argument, the purpose of this essay. Okay, in your essay, analyze how Bogard uses one or more of the features and the directions that precede the passage, or features of your own choice, to strengthen the logic and persuasiveness of his argument. Again, he's told you right off the bat that this is a logical and persuasive argument. So you don't want to have an entire paragraph dedicated to logos. He's already told you that, okay? He's told you it's logical. He's told you it's persuasive. So you want to look at it and say, okay, how does he make it so logical? How does he make it so persuasive? What is the tone? How does he structure his argument? Okay. Be sure that your analysis focuses on the most relevant features of the passage. Your essay should not explain whether you agree with Bogard's claims, but rather explain how Bogard builds an argument to persuade his audience. Again, they don't care about your personal opinion. They really don't. And they will mark you down. So, if we go back up here and we think about our soapstone, what's the subject? Let There Be Dark is the title, but he's told us down here what the subject is. Persuade his audience that natural darkness should be preserved. Okay, the occasion, it's a newspaper article. Okay, the audience, readers of the Los Angeles Times. You can make some assumptions based on them, but generally people who read newspapers have at least a minimal education. They can read. They care about what's happening in the world. They're not necessarily, scholars or college professors or experts on the subject. They are people who want to stay informed. Okay? And then the purpose. Again, he's already told you. He's persuading them. And you go through it that way. So, okay. This is where I want you to look at the SAT style rhetorical essay outline. Okay? That's attached to this as well. And I'm going to run through it with you. This is how you structure it. So the intro, restate the question, being sure to include the title of the piece and the author's full name. So, if we look at it and we say, Paul Bogard, okay, you could start out by, if we follow this, writer's credentials, you could say, writer, Paul Bogard, in his article, Let There Be Dark, from the Los Angeles Times, 2012. Persuades, attempts to persuade his audience that, and then you tell what the argument is, that natural darkness should be preserved. Okay, so you've gotten everything in that first, okay, then the purpose, okay, and then the audience and tone. So if you look at this, so you want the title of the piece, the author's author's full name, the thesis statement that the author has created an argument on the topic, and that its logic and effectiveness are strengthened by 2 or 3 things: rhetorical devices, appeals, acknowledging the opposite opinion and refuting it, structure of the argument. That's always used. Structure of the argument is huge. So an example. This is based on one we actually didn't get to reading this year, but an essay or a speech by Elie Wiesel called The Perils of Indifference. So in The Perils of Indifference, Elie Wiesel argues the dangers of ignoring indifference to others in society and government. The logic of his argument is strengthened by the inclusion of personal anecdotes, his discussion of modern genocides, and the impact indifference has on human beings, both those who are victims of it and those who practice it. Notice, This is 2 sentences long. Okay, that's the entire intro. It's 2 sentences. Then we have the body 1. And this is the same structure you've been writing with for years. You have a topic sentence, you have your iced piece of evidence. Okay, so you have a topic sentence, you introduce the evidence, so you set the stage. You have the quote, the citation, the quote, or if you're summarizing an argument that's a prompt long, you can say, or the anecdote of his childhood, or whatever it happens to be. And then give line and or paragraph number. I'd suggest paragraph numbers simply because it'll be a little easier for you to figure out. And then explain how this supports your claim. The explanation should explain how the quote was used, the quote you used supported your claim, but also highlight rhetorical appeals or devices used in it that make it so effective. So this is where you get down to the nitty-gritty. So if in this anecdote, say we're talking about anecdotes first, he uses some very specific word choice. So he uses terrifying, like Elie Wiesel was a survivor of the Holocaust and the concentration camps. So his anecdotes of his childhood involve a lot of terror. So he would have used some very specific words. He also makes it's an emotional appeal. Because he is describing something that has terrorized him and that has had a huge emotional impact on a lot of people. So here in that explanation is where you talk about the fine detail things like the diction, the word choice, or the appeals being made, whereas the paragraph itself is talking about the argument being made. Okay, and that, or how that argument is being made, which is in this instance, the first one, it was an anecdote from his childhood, and then he went on to discuss another anecdote from later on, from being freed and trying to reintegrate to society, different genocides that are still happening today that people ignore, things like that. Okay, then the second follows exactly the same format. Okay, the third, if you get to a third, exactly the same format. And then the conclusion. And the conclusion is the easiest thing to write because you restate your introduction in slightly different language. Okay, you flip it around and you restate it slightly. That's it. Okay, and you will be able to get through it. Now, I've also posted a copy of the handbook. Where is it? Or I will be posting a copy of the boot camp handbook from last year. It has some good resources. Here's a copy of the prompt. It has the SAT scoring rubric. And there's a couple things, we went through this early on in the year, but I'm going to point them out to you again. If you do not use evidence, you will not get above a 1. Okay, if you don't use any quotes, if you don't discuss any specific evidence from the text, you won't get above a 1. If all you do is label and say, here he uses an ethos appeal, here he uses repetition, here he uses blank, and don't explain how that makes the argument more persuasive, you won't give it above a 2. Okay, that's called just simply labeling and not discussing. In order to get up into the 3, okay, you need to discuss the impact that these rhetorical appeals, that these devices have on the persuasiveness of the argument. Okay? All right, so if you want to get up here, you need to discuss the impact and how they affect. Okay, now when you get your scores, you will see your essay score is going to be out of 8. That's because they have 2 separate readers who read it and give you scores. So your maximum could be both readers giving you 4s straight across the board, which is an 8. Okay, or you could get a 4 and a 3, which is a 7. Or you could get a 3 and a 2, which is a 5. Or you could get a 2 and a 1, which is a 3. Okay, you're going to be okay. Just remember how to read and annotate, and remember, even just lay out the soapstone real quick on the side. You get, I believe, 55 minutes to write this essay. It's not going to take you that long. It never takes you that long. So you can take 15 minutes at the beginning and really read and analyze whatever the prompt is, okay, and lay it out so you know exactly what it is you're going to talk about. Use the soapstone. It's going to really, really help you. Okay, good luck, guys. You have one other big assignment this week. Well, I shouldn't say big assignment. You have a reading to do on Common Lit. I know you guys have liked those in the past, and you have another ed puzzle to do. So have a good week. Don't stress too much about the testing, and good luck.